Good morning. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, June 12th, 2025. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, May 22nd, 2025, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, May 22nd, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 18. Agenda item 19, approving the report to the legislature on Wisconsin holding companies for the year of 2025. The suggested minute associated with agenda item 20, approving the proposed roster update for the WIS Admin Code Chapter PSC 114 Advisory Committee and directing commission staff to draft correspondence confirming committee appointments. Or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 21, directing commission staff to issue a notice of proceeding and notice of proposed rescission regarding Q-Link's ETC designation. And if no comments on the notice are received, directing the commission secretary to sign an order revoking Q-Link's certification and refer the matter to the Wisconsin DOJ for further proceedings.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move we approve the notice of proceeding and rescission associated with agenda item 13.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 14 through 18.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 9400, 2025, I move we approve the 2025 report to the legislature on Wisconsin holding companies.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 1AC 259, I move we approve the proposed roster update for the WIS Admin Code, Chapter PSC 114, Advisory Committee and direct commission staff to draft correspondence confirming committee appointments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
In docket 9597 TI 103, I move we issue a notice of proceeding and notice of proposed rescission of certification regarding Q-Link's ETC designation consistent with the commission secretary's description.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 22, docket 3270 TE 120, MG&E's new commercial electric vehicle pilot application. And Commissioner Nieto is going to lead our discussion on this. So I'm going to hand it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so back in 2019, the commission opened an investigation to consider policies around EV and associated infrastructure in the state of Wisconsin as it pertains to utility service and regulation. So through that generic investigation, a barrier to EV adoption was identified, and that was insufficient charging infrastructure was hindering in the procurement and installation of charging equipment, and part of that was due to high upfront costs. So in front of us today is an application from Madison Gas and Electric seeking to partially address that barrier with a commercial EV charging allowance pilot program. This program is similar to a couple of proposals the commission has approved in the past, namely Excel's and Wisconsin Public Services programs, but it has a few key differences. I'll just say, first of all, thanks for the comments on the memo submitted by the Citizens Utility Board and MG&E. Both of these were really helpful. And thanks to the applicant, too, for working with Dane County and City of Madison. It sounded like that was useful interaction there. We do have what I think is a promising proposal overall here with an innovative and I think quite simple, elegant design. This is very reminiscent of the focus on energy, solar PV prescriptive incentives. I won't go into too much detail on reiterating the program design. Everyone has had an opportunity to read the memo and materials and provide comments here. I will just say at a very high level that this is being proposed as a program with a budget, not as a rate, so different from some of the other programs or rates that we've seen. Customers in this program would stay on their underlying CG 2, 4, and 6 rates. And the program is proposed to be, this budget is proposed to be funded within the CG 2, 4, and 6 classes, ultimately through what MG&E is saying will be an increase in sales and consequent decrease in rates that the program participants would cause by bringing EV load onto the system. So the program would give a commercial customer a flat rate rebate on a per added KW basis that the customer can use to pay down the upfront costs of the make-ready equipment and potentially for the charging equipment at the site. And these are both customer-owned property facilities that these incentive rebates are going towards. So again, this is a much more simple and streamlined design than some of the other EV programs we've seen. And we do bump up against a few policy rate making and accounting considerations to discuss as described in our memo here. So namely, I think we have to ensure there's no cross-subsidization and that non-participating ratepayers are held harmless. One particularly important part of holding other ratepayers harmless in this case is that we are dealing with rebates for optional private property. And so this is, our need is to ensure that non-participating customers are not paying for improvements to participating customers' private property. The commission has fully supported the principle of holding non-participating ratepayers harmless with new utility programs that create optional products. Customers can voluntarily participate and agree to pay all costs associated with programs' revenue requirements. Designating these new programs as pilot programs, requiring robust accounting and reporting requirements, helps us to ensure that other customers are held harmless. So therefore, whether this program is approvable, to me, hinges on MG&E's assertion that all of its customers will benefit from the program design because the incremental load created through increased EV adoption will expand the base through which utility costs are spread. I will be voting to approve the program, but with conditions and reporting requirements to ensure no cross-subsidization occurs. One thing I will note is I would have liked to see more robust analysis supporting this assertion of no cross-subsidization and of the incremental load. We did not get that from MG&E in this case, and so I'm interested to hear how my colleagues viewed that lack of analysis. I think we can put conditions and reporting requirements in place to get this program launched as a pilot and to cover our bases, but that's something that I did find missing here. We also have to consider whether the program design is proper and whether this novel design requires a waiver of any statutory Wisconsin admin code or tariff provisions. I did find the program design generally proper for a pilot and in the public interest, so long as there is no cross-subsidization. I was open to requiring the clawback modification that staff suggested. On the side of waivers, I found that no waivers would be needed if we were to approve this. This program doesn't appear to conflict with the extension rules. This is not an extension of distribution facility services. It's not in conflict with any statutory requirements if there's no cross-subsidization. And in terms of the utilities tariff itself, it's the utilities job to ensure it complies with its own tariff, and it needs to make tariff modifications if those are needed. So I didn't find waivers to be necessary. So again, overall, I'd authorize the program as a pilot. I would defer the costs so that we can tee this up for review in a future rate case, not the current one that's going on by the applicant. And I would, as part of that, add a reporting requirement for the applicant to provide a system benefit or cost benefit analysis to show that the program is paying for itself. And I would also add conditions dealing with cost allocation and review of cost allocation in a future rate case to ensure that if the benefits are not creating a net system benefit and essentially the program budget is not paying for itself, then we have proper cost allocation to avoid cross-subsidization. So I think this approach taken together will allow us to protect non-participating customers if we are to approve this program, and that deferral to the next rate case would allow us to sort all that out prior to budget amounts going into rates potentially. All that said, we do have 6 decision points to walk through here, and we'll take them one by one. I'll share the reporting item and condition that I mentioned here under the relevant decision points. And again, I look forward to hearing how my colleagues viewed this one. So our first decision point is the commercial electric vehicle charging allowance pilot program tariff decision. Again, I would essentially approve this as proposed. Under the reporting requirements that we discuss next, I will offer that cost benefit reporting item. And then when we get to the accounting treatment discussion, I'll offer that item around deferral and cost allocation and future assignment of costs. Taken together, this will allow us to ensure system benefit or otherwise consider rate class or even direct assignment treatment of some sort on a going forward basis prior to making any decision to further extend the pilot past a future rate case. And again, I'm also open to that clawback suggestion by staff. I will note, I don't agree with the applicant's assertion that the holdback is the same as the clawback. They were two very different provisions. The clawback deals with the first 2 years after the full allowance is extended. That said, I think there are pros and cons there, and was interested to hear what my colleagues think on the clawback. So with this one, I am at alternative 1, approve the program as proposed. Again, unless my colleagues would like to include the clawback provision. Chair Strand?
Thank you. So I think that we're in close alignment, but I think we got to those positions or decisions in a different path. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So just to start off, as proposed, I was not comfortable with this pilot program. So my review and analysis of this included me identifying a number of potential modifications and some additional reporting requirements to raise my comfort level to get to a place where I thought that it was approvable. And the intent of those was to establish a robust set of guardrails to reduce unintended consequences, especially cross-subsidization, and to signal that if modifications or other existing programs are pursued, that we are going to require robust analysis regarding customer benefits, demonstration of no cross-subsidization and proper cost allocation to help inform our decision on continuing the pilot, recoverability in a future rate proceeding, signaling to our other utilities that you mentioned that also have similar programs about what kind of information we're looking for as it relates to EV commercial charging programs in general. And again, reporting requirements to help get us that information. So on decision item 1 specifically, that put me at alternative 2, which would be to approve it with modifications. And then the other modifications are things that we've been talking about. So again, I don't know that the actual positions on those decision items matter. I think it's the substance of the modifications and the additional reporting requirements that it sounds like we both are seeking in order to approve it overall. I don't want to I don't want to bury the lead, but also I don't want to, I would like to hear from Commissioner Hawkins as well. So I'll just say that my modifications seek to either remove the charger or reduce the budget amount, and to specifically require additional reporting conditions, at least 2, asking for information demonstrating that benefits of the program, so system-wide and customer-specific, but then also the programmatic cost assignment options, and ensuring that that we have information regarding the direct assignment of costs. And again, I think that requirement would be similar to what we're asking for from the existing programs for 2 of our other utilities. So about the report requirement, again, I just need to know I need to see information that the cost benefit analysis and discussing the system and how the public and specific customers are benefiting from this program. Again, I thought there were certain things that were lacking, and when we are reviewing in the future recoverability and/or continuing of the pilot, I think that's going to be essential information to help inform that decision. So I think similar places, maybe got there in a different way. There's a lot more to talk about, obviously. So I'll let Commissioner Hawkins go, and then we can continue the discussion.
Thanks. I got to a similar place, I guess a third route I probably took. I landed at alternative 1. I also had reporting conditions that I think are critical to ensure all of the protections that the two of you have been talking about. A couple of my thoughts that I'll share on the concern Commissioner Nieto raised on the lack of analysis and getting comfortable with that. There's two things. One, you mentioned it's a program, not a rate, so we have an inherent sort of cap on what that sort of exposure could be. And then I was also comfortable with the calculation the applicant provided for how they arrived at the prescriptive value. They demonstrated a couple different areas of conservatism in that, and it was based on their knowledge of EV charging, and they used like a 60% derating factor for how load shows up. And they had a couple different places in their method at arriving at the prescriptive value that I thought sort of buffered that potential risk. And so I thought that conservatism in the methodology to determine the allowance helped on the front end while we wait for reporting that kind of proves it out on the back end. And so in the spirit of being a pilot, I was comfortable with the fact that they did as much of the homework on the front end as they could, with what they know. I was also comfortable with the fact that this type of calculation for the extension allowances is sort of common practice, and there's an understanding of how those benefits flow to the system just based on that. That's just a broad recognition, and growing load is sort of very common, and this type of allowance, while it's different because it's specific to EV and it's optional, that broader framework is something that's well understood, and the benefits to the system is well understood. So while we don't have the exacting details, I think at a high level we get it, and we're comfortable with that sort of approach to reducing the barriers to additional usage. So I got to Alt 1 for those reasons, and I wanted to address the clawback. I am anti-clawback. I think the holdback is a really elegant solution, and it basically forces those that are receiving the allowance to prove that pre-screening method to get to earn the allowance, you do actually reach those levels at demand level. That is the basis for the calculation and the basis for the revenue that will be going to the utility. So, once that's reached, I think you've sort of demonstrated that the calculation was good. It fits with the program requirements. And because there was a 5-year payback in the analysis, the idea of going out beyond 2 years, it just kind of covers a small number of years gap and adds a lot of administrative monitoring burden that I think defeats the purpose of this sort of prescriptive approach. So that's why I did think about that clawback. I was originally really supportive of it, but then in looking at the number of instances where that could even be useful after we have the holdback protection, I thought it was too much burden for what you actually may even hypothetically get with that sort of protection. So that's it for me on this one, and I'll explain my reporting requirements. They're probably similar to my colleagues, but that's where I'm at.
I'll just say that, since I didn't address it, that I didn't think that the clawback was necessary. I thought the holdback was sufficient. I think your discussion about the clawback is in line with what I was thinking as well. So that's where I am on that right now. Thank you.
Thanks to you both. I think to Chair Strand's earlier point, regardless whether we're calling it Alt 1 or Alt 2, we're all in a similar spot and we can move forward. And it was good to hear your thoughts on the clawback, and I'll stay where I was originally at with that as well, and be at approving the general program design where it is, but with some conditions here. I will say, as we move forward into the conditions, I think one area of discussion where we might diverge a little bit is on the differentiation between the charger and the make-ready equipment. I'm seeing both of those as they're both customer-owned property and customer-owned facilities. I didn't see a need to make a distinction and say, kind of, I'm okay with a rebate going towards the make-ready, but not towards the charger. They're both going to privately owned facilities outside of kind of your typical distribution extension model, where that extension is being made to purchase further utility facilities. I didn't see as much of a difference there to support creating a distinction. And so when we get into the reporting conditions, where I would be at would be recommending all of the conditions 1 through 10, and then here the condition that I would incorporate around the system benefit or cost benefit would be the applicant shall work with staff to ensure that costs are tracked and reported accurately and completely, as well as defining metrics to clearly determine how benefits will be calculated. These metrics shall include a clear timeline on when the benefits are expected to be realized. And then I'd have that information added as item number 11 to our reporting list.
So that's for decision item 2, you're at alternative 3, so 1 through 10 plus what you just said.
That's right.
Okay. I can support the condition that you just proposed. And again, I think I'm also, however we decide that this is articulated post-decision, looking for information that in the future rate case that they're required to provide substantive information demonstrating the benefits of the program. So not just, like, I think what you're saying is, like, this is the information that this is how you need to start calculating these things and kind of starting to provide or create data. And then what I'm saying is, like, then we need to actually see the work and see how it's going as a pilot, so that when we can make informed decisions based on the information that you are seeking for them to start collecting and creating. So in the future rate case, I'm looking for information from the applicant that's substantive and demonstrates the benefits of the program. It's necessary that they include a cost-benefit analysis and a discussion of the system-wide and public interest benefits, which I think, again, is a new condition. And then, I don't know if if you want to start talking about cost assignment right now, but again, in a future rate proceeding, I need information regarding direct assignment of cost to participating customers. I need to know that how they're preventing costs from being allocated to different customer classes and avoiding cross-subsidization. And I think that is consistent with what we've required of other similar programs for other utilities where we are concerned about the same things. So again, however we get there or whatever we call those things, I don't think matters, but that's the kind of information I'm seeking as reporting requirements, because we know that as a pilot, this is not the first time that we're gonna be reviewing this program. And then especially when, depending on where we are in deferral, when recoverability of the deferred amount is sought from the applicant, that's the kind of information that I'm gonna need in order to, make those decisions. And also, like you said, determine, the future of the pilot when we're doing that for that future review. Again, and that's kind of the decision item too, but we're all over the place. So Commissioner Hawkins.
Thanks. I think I can support what both of you were suggesting. I went at it a bit of a different way, so I'm just going to throw it out there to see what you think of it. But I was at all 3 supporting the 10 that were laid out. I was suggesting modifying reporting number 4 which was to track the incentives that were being paid out. And I was basically going to add to that, you track the costs of each of the incentives that are paid out with the incentive that is paid out. And so you can see sort of the comparison between individual project costs and individual project incentives. And so to get at that actual proving that the value that they've arrived at is a good one. And so from analyzing this in the future, did they get the sweet spot with that calculation arriving at the 300 and the make ready and the EV infrastructure costs? Like, we could easily ask them to just say, per project, what was the cost of the work on the customer site and what was the allowance, and just get that really clear. I think that would support the sort of cost benefit analysis that both of you are talking about, but I was just, yeah, and so just making sure that we have that data requirement spelled out very clearly. I think just modifying 4 could get us there. Similarly, on the benefit side is the revenue that the utility receives, and that's a modified number 9, where we were asking for the total megawatt hours sold associated with this tariff. I thought that one was a bit odd because the cost for the allowance, or the revenue for the allowance, is based on the demand charge and not the energy charge. So I had a proposed modification to 9, which would be the total megawatt hours sold by peak period, because they're all time of use rates, as well as the revenue from the customer maximum KW charge. So basically, getting all of the revenue from those in this program, the TOU rates, the demand charge, and then we have all the cost information and then all the revenue information. That would support the type of analysis I think both of you are talking about, the metric itself, but the way that those 10 were, I don't think we had that clearly asked for. So I was fine just asking for that data. Chair Strand just mentioned having the applicant do the work as well. I'm fine with that, but I think we need to modify those to make sure that we're getting that reported, and then that maybe makes asking for the work simpler as well. I had one other thing that I'm sort of indifferent on, want to throw out there. In the memo discussed a potential satisfaction survey, and I just know for myself, when we looked at an EV program in the rate cases last year, that was a really big piece of my decision, was they had a lot of really good information about how bad the existing program was, and that sort of led to trying something new. And so I'm trying to be optimistic, and if we do a satisfaction survey, I hope we find a bunch of like really positive reviews, and then we can use that for future decisions. And so I didn't want to add one more thing to the applicant's plate, but I do know how valuable that was to my decision-making in that other context. So I don't want to foreclose that opportunity either. So throwing it out there, not married to it, but I wanted to see what both of you thought about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think your modifications of 4 and 9 do get at the overall cost benefit or system net benefit analysis in a broad way, and I think our decision to make is I think your approach gives a pathway and a methodology to do it, and then I think the other option is leaving it open and saying, work with staff and figure out the methodology and present it and do it. I think your methodology you're proposing covers what, at least what I was looking for, and I would assume what Chair Strand was looking for under that category as well. And on a customer satisfaction survey, I was with you on that one too. I think there's value in it. I ultimately came to, if the applicant would like to do something like that, that just even hearing you discuss how helpful that is for future decisions and proceedings, I think that's something useful. I don't know necessarily that I would require it. But again, and Chair Strand, I'll turn it over to you too if you have any follow-up on these items. What I think we can do is take all of this into account and move forward to the next decision items as well, kind of get through our menu of conditions here and then get to the same spot.
Yep, okay, so I'll address the satisfaction survey first. I agree that it has value, but I don't feel that we need to order it. I think on this and some of our a lot of our other dockets, our staff ends up doing the work on behalf of the applicant. And to me, it's up to the applicant to prove all of these things. And if they decide that a satisfaction survey is one way that they can provide that information, gather data and information from potential or current customers, if this is approved, then that's up to them to decide how they want to do that and how they want to prove it. What we're saying is we need to be shown the work. So I don't feel it's necessary to order it, but I understand that it very likely has value. In terms of the conditions, I think this is messy. This has been messy already, but I think it's probably easiest to say, based on the discussion we're having today, that staff can work with the applicant to develop the best way to capture this discussion in the conditions, whether that's just modifying 4.9, if it's adding additional conditions or trying to provide clarity to what we're seeking. Again, I think we're all seeking very similar things. I think we all got there in a different way. So I think it's best to leave it up to the people who are actually going to have to, A, live with this, and then B, write and analyze it before we take it up again and have them capture all of these things that we're seeking. Obviously, we have a chance to review those things before, if we don't feel that it's accurately captured. But I think that that's probably the cleanest way to try to, in an attempt to memorialize what we're all looking for in terms of reporting requirements.
That approach makes sense to me too, and I think as we get into some of the accounting section, I have another condition to propose that was similar to what you discussed about deferral in the next rate case and looking at cost allocation and direct assignment and that. So
That could also be.
we have a menu of items to work with staff to establish.
Exactly.
Commissioner Hawkins, does that broader approach work for you with your input around how 4 and 9 could be modified to make this cleaner?
It does. I'm glad that it's out there
Yeah.
in the world. And also, I agree with the suggestions you had on a satisfaction survey. I think it's in the applicant's interest to do it if they want to. I don't think we need to require it. So I'm good with that as well.
Thank you. All right, and then getting to the waiver, I already covered this, my position on this, but we do have this question of whether waivers are required. And we have the option to grant waivers of WIS admin code requirements under a specific provision, in this case in 113. We grant those rarely, particularly in unique and unusual circumstances that align with the public interest. So I did review this proposal in light of the distribution extension rules in 113, and I found that those rules are inapplicable to this proposal. I don't find that this is a distribution extension. I think in the other programs we saw, like NSPWs and WPSCs, those were distribution extensions because the utilities were basically saying, we're going to extend our extension to the make-ready equipment, and this is going to be an extension for us, and that's why we had to modify and waive some of those extension rules. This, again, to the point of this being essentially an elegant and simple program design, it's cutting everything off right at the meter, and everything past the meter is still customer-owned, and it's just creating a budget to give an incentive. So I found the extension rules to be inapplicable to this. And again, like I mentioned before, in regard to the utility's own tariff and service rules, that's the utility's responsibility to comply with its service rules and all of those schedules. The utility isn't requesting any changes to existing schedules in order to remove provisions that might be in conflict with this program. I'm not aware of any, so I wouldn't grant any sort of blanket waiver as a just in case. I would leave that to the utility to be responsible to comply with. So with that said, I was at alt 3 on this one, grant none of the waivers. Thanks.
So I was a little concerned that the applicant found that no waivers were necessary and our staff felt that waivers were necessary. And then Commissioner Nieto was at alt 3, I was at alt 2, because I think it's probably best to have staff and the applicant, again, work together to identify which waivers, because I think some of the waiver provisions that were cited in the memo do depend on if we make modifications to this program. So I would be most comfortable having the applicant and the staff work together to decide which, if any, rules are applicable in terms of waivers needed, and then delegate that waiver decision authority to the DCA administrator, so that they can decide, or that they can work on, they can approve waiving those that are decided, that, those rules that are determined to be applicable. I think, again, we're just I don't think we know. If they're saying no, and staff saying yes, and you're saying no, and I'm saying yes, where are we, right? So I'm curious to hear what Commissioner Hawkins says on this. I'm not gonna die on the waiver hill at all, but that's just where I was coming into today.
I appreciate Commissioner Nieto's point on the difference between this program and the existing approved programs and the stackable nature of the extension and how they worked that out of their calculation might make this more of a clean break than I originally was thinking about. And so I want to talk to legal about that, I guess, and hear their take on that, if we could take a break and do that. Just because I wanted, if we can just solve this now, I would prefer to do that and get it over with, as opposed to leaving it open-ended to be thought about in the background. So that's where I'm at on this one.
Yep, that sounds good. And I'll say to that point, just for both of you in your break time or discussions, if this helps, the stackable nature of this is, I think, to the point of why the waivers aren't required, because not only is this not only are the extension rules not applicable to what this program is doing, they can actually be used in tandem and might have to be used in tandem with this program in the stackable way. So like if you do require a distribution extension, then you go through the full process, everything in 113 applies, the utility will comply with all of that and isn't proposing to not comply with it. And then past the customer's meter, the program kicks in. That kind of additionality or stackable nature of how they design this additionally points to me that these waivers aren't necessary. But with that, are you thinking like 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that enough? Is that enough, Chair Strand? Do you want?
I think that's a question for legal, but yep, I'm fine with 10 minutes if that's sufficient.
I think we might need more to do breakout rooms, so let's give it 20.
Deal.
Okay, we're gonna take a 20-minute break. Thank you.
Test.
Well, I think we're good now. You're on, by the way.
Okay, we are back. I'm going to turn it over to legal counsel to clarify/summarize where we left off, and then we will continue our discussion. Thank you.
Okay, we're at the waivers, and we have an alternative that staff and applicant shall work together to decide which, if any, waivers are needed, and then delegate to the DECIA administrator with advice and consent of DERA administrator, the decision of whether to grant waiver requests.
Okay, so I think that summarizes at least where I left off on decision item 3, which again is in regards to potential waivers to administrative rules. We need to wrap up this discussion and then move on to the next item. So Commissioner Hawkins?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm fine joining the proposal you made, Chair Strand, and appreciate the guidance from legal on some of the past experiences with these waivers, and so I'm fine joining there and appreciate the language, if any, to still contemplate the fact that none may be required.
I'll join you both on this in light of the, if any, language here. Thanks. All right, commercial accounting treatment is our next decision point. Here, I was at Alt 1, accepting the proposed accounting treatment without modifications. And under the next decision point, accounting order conditions is where I would discuss deferral and cost assignment. But in general, the utilities plan around deferral and accounting was fine to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Again, I'll just say, before I state my position on decision item 4, that I was most comfortable with this program with either removing just the charger component so that A, we don't exceed what we've done with other utilities, and B, so that the customers have charger skin in the game. Or a cleaner way to do that would just be reduce the proposed budget amount across the board, and not develop a specific cost associated with charger removal and decrease the budget by that amount instead. But it sounds like that's not where you guys are. So if that was where we were, I'd be at 2, which would be that the deferral amount would just be the reduced program budget amount. But if we're not there, I'm fine with 1. So just getting that out there. And then I'm fine on 5. I'm curious to hear what you would say on 5, because I think we've had a good discussion about conditions thus far and concerns and how we want to address those concerns. So I was at 1 on 5, but again, want to leave that open to our further discussion on those points specifically. Thank you.
And I was at Alt 1 on decision 4 and wanted to just clarify that the applicant did not request carrying costs for the deferral, and is that consistent with everyone else's understanding and what we're approving here?
Mine as well. I wouldn't add carrying costs to the deferral.
Same.
Okay, I'm good there.
And then under the accounting order conditions, I'm at Alt 1, accepting all of the proposed accounting order conditions. And then the item that I would add, which again aligns with what we've already discussed, is as part of the rate case where the recovery of the deferral is considered, MG&E must present options for programmatic cost assignment for commission consideration. And that one of those options should include a direct assignment of cost to participating customers. And so this is essentially a backstop if that cost benefit or net system benefit it doesn't appear to materialize with the information that we gather under the reporting, then we would have, say, a net programmatic cost to consider how to allocate on a going forward basis, and that's something that I would handle in that future rate case. Chair Strand?
Thank you. Again, I think differing paths, but same end result in terms of what we're seeking, especially in the future proceeding. And that directly, how you said it directly aligns with exactly what I'm seeking. So I'm absolutely comfortable in supporting 1 plus what you just articulated. Thank you.
I'm a little confused by that, and if we leave open the potential for direct assignment of the programmatic costs to people that are participating, customers that are participating in the near term, is that not retroactive rate making? They've signed up for a tariff, and they've been participating, and we then find later, based on some future analysis that hadn't been done when they signed up for that tariff, that they're all of a sudden going to get more costs, or is that for future participants that changes the allocation? And so I'm slightly concerned with how that might work out in practice.
It would be on a going forward basis, to your point, as of that rate case. So let's say there are $3 million of a deferral, and that is being approved to be included into rates pursuant to some sort of cost allocation, or maybe there's a new rate class created or what have you, then that $3 million would be a part of that going forward rate calculation, but it wouldn't impact kind of the past 2 years of customers who had been on the program under CG 2, 4, and 6 and what they had paid.
Also, I mean, your concern is valid, but because no decision is being made, it's for the commission to consider that in the future proceeding. So obviously, we need to be mindful of that in the future proceeding, but that's not, no decision is being made about that today. It's for the commissions to consider. So that's why I'm comfortable with it not being that today.
That sounds good. I can join you both there. I just wanted to be clear about what we were teeing up in the future.
Yes, and that's a good distinction. Finally, an easy decision point. This is about closing the EV for multifamily and workplace electric vehicle managed charging experimental pilot rider for all of the reasons that the applicant provided clearly in the application. I'm at alternative 1 on this one.
I was at alternative 1 as well. Thank you.
Same here. Alt 1.
Finally, so I think we have decided to approve this program pursuant to our discussion. We do have a menu of reporting conditions and items for staff to work with the applicant on. And the last thing I would mention is just because of some of the differing approaches in our discussion to this is something that would be good to see back as an order, I think, if the two of you would like to see it back as well. So throwing that out there as an option for us to include at this point.
I think that's fine. And wrapping it up, why don't we just have legal counsel summarize right now what we're moving, where we are, and then again, I think Commissioner Nieto's recommendation is kind of that belt and suspenders approach to ensure that we have eyes on it prior to it actually going into effect.
Yep.
Okay, so what we have is for the conditions. Okay, so Alt 2, for 1, we have Alt 2, Sub Alt D, and then for conditions, we have, in a future rate case, applicant shall provide substantive information demonstrating the benefits of the program, which includes cost-benefit analyses and a discussion of system-wide and public interest benefits. And then with respect to additional reporting conditions, staff shall work with the applicant to develop reporting conditions consistent with today's discussion.
That works for me.
Okay, and then just to reiterate, for waiver, we have a new alternative, which is staff and applicant shall work together to decide which, if any, waivers are needed, and then delegate to the DC administrator with advice and consent of dear administrator the decision of whether to grant any needed waiver requests.
Yep.
Okay. I think we're in agreement on where we are. And again, we'll have another opportunity to make sure that the order reflects the actual intent of the actions today.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I think we're ready for a motion on this one then. Thank you.
All right. In 3270 TE 120, I move we approve Madison Gas and Electric's commercial electric vehicle charging allowance pilot program tariff consistent with our discussion today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for that robust discussion and for everyone following along and for team in OGC for keeping us on track. That does bring us to our final agenda item of today, which is number 23, docket 3650 TE 107, the Menasha Project Share Tariff Program application. Commissioner Nieto, bless her, is also leading the discussion on this one, so I'll hand this over to her as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't go into great detail about this agenda item. This is an item that we already discussed. It was laid over from a previous commission meeting. We didn't issue an order on this item, but rather gave the utility some instructions to work with staff to flesh out a tariff and an MOU. This item came about as a result of a billing audit commission staff conducted. And essentially, Menasha Utilities has a really helpful program called Project Share that, through a line item on Menasha's utility bill, collects voluntary donations from customers to share with neighbors who are in need of help, who are subject to disconnection or who are disconnected. And those dollars are given to an organization called Levin, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that works with the customers who are in need and provides them with funds from the donations to help stop the disconnection or reconnect the service. So Menasha has run this program with Levin for a long time, and on average, this program helps out 60 Menasha customers each year, and hundreds of generous customers in Menasha donate to help out. So staff identified during that billing audit that this type of program should likely be included in a schedule in the utilities filed rates and rules, not because this is a rate or a charge, and not because this is a program that even involves utility dollars. Again, this is below the line donation money here, but because this is a utility supported effort that intersects with customer payment agreements and disconnections, it's proper to have established filed information about this program. It's proper that the utility have an MOU with Levin in order to ensure that, one, customer donations are transparently and consistently handled, and if something happens, eventually return to the utility and donating customers under an MOU. And then number two, that there's enough information in the filed rules such that we could investigate should there ever be a complaint regarding discrimination or something intersecting with disconnection of service in this program. So I'll say anecdotally, there are other utilities in the state offering the same type of donation pathway for neighbors to help out their neighbors. These are great local programs, and I think more important than ever in light of discussions around utility costs and tightening assistance environments. And I can tell that Menasha takes a lot of pride in this program and clearly in its community. And they are the first utility to file one of these for a project share type program with us as a tariff schedule. They did a lot of work, a lot of correspondence with staff on this. And so I want to thank Menasha and Menasha's general utility manager for the work they did, all the back and forth information sharing to help get this into a schedule. I'll say we gave in our last meeting a list of suggestions of items that could go into the tariff and the MOU to give us enough information for the very basic customer protection purposes that I named before. I reviewed the draft tariff and the data request responses, and I do think the utility has provided us with more than enough information in order to generally protect donating customers and ensure fair service to existing customers who are subject to disconnection. We definitely have more than enough here in terms of established parameters in order to investigate a complaint should one arise. Even, I noticed, looking at the tariff sheet, that's a pretty robust tariff sheet for a below-the-line voluntary donation program. The memo did raise a few items that, the commission gave this list of things that it would like to see, and here are the things that didn't materialize or that came out differently than what the specific list was. I'll just address specifically regarding LIHEAP. I'll say this. I've given more thought to this issue and looked at what the utility proposed and how they work with Levin. And so for example, going back to working in consumer affairs, when I would investigate complaints, what you would get is a customer who is subject to disconnection. They owe $600 to stop it, and they are not eligible for energy assistance. Maybe they've applied and been denied, or they know they can't apply. They're a little bit over the income limits. And so then what you do at that point is you start to talk to them about, is there anyone in your family who can help? Have you called you look up the county agencies, have you called 211, Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, and places like Levin, and have you tapped into those? And these programs come in where LIHEAP can't, and so does Keep Wisconsin Warm and Cool Fund. Frankly, they don't require people to qualify for LIHEAP to be a part of that statewide program because it's supposed to provide additional safety net. And so I found that Levin, they ask people to apply for LIHEAP. I think that's fine. I wouldn't require people to receive LIHEAP on top of that. If I did anything here, I'd almost require less, if somebody knows they're not eligible for LIHEAP, not force them to apply anyways. That seems like a little bit much, but that's already Levin's practice, and this is a voluntary program. So that's an example of something I thought was fine. I thought the language around maximum assistance was sufficient. It maxes out at how much the customer owes for a down payment. And I don't think we need more on removal from the program because this isn't an ongoing program. It's a one-time request for some assistance on a bill. So with all of that, I was at Alt 1. I would approve the tariff as provided by Menasha. And then with regard to the reporting, I appreciated staff teeing that up for us as an option to look at. I personally did not find that we would need it or had much use of it. I think the MOU and tariff clearly spell out the expectations. The program way more than pays for the nominal administrative time that's required to run it. And the reporting is duplicative of the info that the utility will already retain in its accounting records, and it's going to separate out sub-accounts per the uniform system of accounts, and then those records are required to be retained per the utility record retention schedules. So anytime we ever want to look at that, we can just ask for it in a rate case or if there's a complaint. I didn't find for myself anything that I would hope that folks would track on this and report back to us or anything like that. So I wouldn't add that additional step to the utility. So I was at Alt 3 on reporting requirements for that one. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chair Strand.
Thank you. I'm at Alt 1 and Alt 3 as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I am in the same place.
Well, thank you.
I'm really excited about this, and I'll just add that I reviewed all the requirements that we had and was really reviewing it and being mindful that this program has been up and running successfully and did not want to overcomplicate a good thing. And so I think we struck a nice balance in getting the protections that you outlined very accurately, and I'm comfortable with those. So I'm really glad we're now able to approve this. So.
Great. Yeah, same. And I'll make a motion in 3560 TE 107. I move we approve Menasha Utilities Project Share Program Tariff consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That does conclude our official business for today. Our next open meeting is scheduled for next Thursday, June 19th, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, June 19, 2025 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.